as a professor, one of the things I'm trying to always think about is what is the next big question? And it seems to me that one of the questions that most of us are really thinking about right now is what happens if we live to 100 years? Or what happens if our kids live to 100 years? But one of the most fundamental facts about living to 100 is if you live to 100 and you save, you know, a normal saving rate, and you want to retire on 50% of your final income, you will be working until you're in your late 70s, early 80s. And that's just a fact. We ran through the lives of three people. One we call Jack, who died when he was 70. One we call Jimmy, who's going to live until he's 90, 80, 90, and is currently in his 40s. Well, he probably live longer than that. And one called Jane, who's now 20 years old, and we expect that she'll live to at least 100. Why would Jane immediately jump into something? Actually, wouldn't it be more sensible for her to take a look at her options, to build options and then start to make choices? We're already seeing this. It's no surprise that young people are getting married older. Why would we surprise that they're buying houses older, that they're having children older, that they're doing their careers later? This all makes total sense. So we expect to see a new stage of exploration emerging. But there's two really important consequences of that. The first is that when new stages emerge, transitions become really important. So the interesting thing about a three-stage life is that there's only two stages. There's a transition from education to work to retirement. And secondly, and this I think is profound actually, Jimmy was in lockstep. Everybody was educated at the same time as Jimmy. He's the one who died in his 70s. Everybody went to school. Everybody retired at the same age. Jane is not in lockstep. So if you think that each person designs their own life, they're not going to do it at the same time as each other. And actually, when we think about what are the implications for policy and for corporations, the end of lockstep is really one of them. Because certainly within corporations, and you know this very well from McKinsey, it's been easy for us to imagine that if you know somebody's age, you know their stage. But if you disconnect age from stage, suddenly you could be at university when you're 60, you could be doing a portfolio when you're 20, you could be exploring when you're 70 or when you're 17. One of the interesting things about living long lives is that you have more stages, and more stages mean more transitions. And when lockstep goes, you're making the transition often on your own. But transitions are also to do with networks. In fact, it turns out that networks are really important for long lives, and all sorts of different types of networks. But the network that helps you to transition is what sociologists would call weak ties, people who are different from you, whom you don't know very well. Because the problem with transition is that the people who know you best and who are most like you do not want you to change. Because if you change, then they're thinking, well, hang on, I've got to change as well. So actually, if you think about who could I be, who could my future self be, the glimpses of the future self are not going to come from the people that you know really well. They're going to come from the associates, this huge crowd of diverse people that you know. So what does this mean for corporations? Well, here's some ideas. The most obvious one is don't retire people at 60. It's the craziest idea there is. Stop doing it. It's going to cause massive problems for the future. Let people work as long as they can. That's the first thing. And that means that they have to be cognitively, healthy, but that all can be dealt with. That number one. Number two, realize that people aren't going to have that three-stage career. They will want to hop out at times. They'll want to, rejuvenate. They'll want to learn a new skill. They'll want to go on sabbaticals. Academics go on sabbaticals. Why can't consultants? So think more creatively about career paths. And the third thing is, when we built the life of Jane, and we built it from an economic perspective, Jane's life works best if there's two people earning. It's pretty hard for Jane to live a whole life, support a family on her own. She needs somebody else. So one of the questions we asked ourselves is, where is the change going to happen? Is our governments going to change? No, they have to be elected, and most of this stuff is awful, which is why, if you notice, governments are not changing the pension age very much. Is it going to be corporations? Yes, but probably very slow. Change will happen at the level of the individual. And we will see, and I can't wait to see it, we're already been seeing it, lots and lots of experimentation as people individually, in their communities, in their families, begin to build lives that are sustainable for the long term. And we are watching that with enormous interest. In fact, our website, www.100yearlife.com, invites people to come in and give us their stories. We will be collecting lots of stories about how people are doing this.